Okay, morning ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to lecture 3 on classes. As mentioned, I'm going to be doing, yesterday we did the theory, today we're going to do a bit more practical, and this afternoon's tutorial we're going to introduce you into the UML, as that takes a bit of time to explain, so the double lecture this afternoon is going to be useful for that. If we have the time, we'll also answer any Q&A questions you guys may have, just to get you guys ready for work as we go forward. Again, I know I probably should have had slides for the Discord server, but please do change your nicknames to your student numbers. I see a lot of you have. I do thank you for that. I do appreciate that. Some of you haven't. We're going to start kicking those students from the server until they know how to change their nicknames. We'll put up a slide on how to change your nicknames if need be. You guys can hear me? No issues with audio this morning? Because you're all very quiet. Thank you. Okay, just one thing. I'm not going to apologize for my rant yesterday about professionalism, ladies and gentlemen. I'm trying to teach you guys how to be IT professionals, so I'm going to keep that in mind when I'm teaching you. So please do take the course seriously in the context of where you're trying to achieve in your careers. You are trying to become an IT professional as well at some point. Okay. And just note, I think, Mr. Van der Westhuizen, you can correct me if I'm wrong. All IT students, extended, mainstream, and the O2 qualify to join the BCS when they finish their honors, I think. It was agreed on a few years ago that the extended degree students also qualify for BCS membership. I'm trying to think if your year, I think, does qualify. So you guys actually qualify to join the British Computer Society. It's what some of you may or may not know. The Academy is one of the only 2 universities in South Africa and outside of UK that is accredited by the British Computer Society. So we have an international accredited degree. I myself am a CITP, a certified IT professional through the BCS. I think Mr. Van der Westhuizen is a member of the BCS. So we are members of the British Computer Society. I am a CITP, so I'm a professional, a chartered professional in the IT field. It's just about getting international accreditation for your degree. We'll discuss it another day in more depth. Let's head into the lecture today. Okay. So, slideshow. Classes, general knowledge. We're having a interesting person. We're considering the father of computer science and AI, Alan Turing. He is a very well-known individual in the circle of artificial intelligence. He also is AI is some of the field that Mr. Van der Westhuizen and myself have specialized our research in. So he is someone that we generally use in our research. Interesting notes, he was a code breaker in World War II. Okay, I'm just looking at the notes. Mr. Van der Westhuizen made. Turing conceived a machine, one machine for all possible purposes, known as a universal Turing machine. Computers as we know them today. So he conceived of the idea of a general computer as we know it today as well. So he's quite interesting. He also developed something known as the Turing test, which would test if something was actually artificially intelligent or not. If we have time, we'll come back and discuss what that means, but I want to try to focus on classes today. But that's your general knowledge for the day is Alan Turing. Quite a prominent figure in the field of AI and in very specifically with the Turing test. it's a way of testing your artificial intelligence to see if it actually qualifies as AI according to his way of thinking. Okay, so today's focus is encapsulation in action and what is classes. So we're going to go do a quick recap, because in order for you guys to maybe easily grasp classes, we're going back to look at record structures. You spent last semester making record structures for the most part of the semester. Now, record structures were very good at actually encapsulating. Okay, a record structure was encapsulation, because you would group common things together to form a record or a structure. So here we would create a student structure, name, surname, graduated. So that's encapsulation by grouping information together. So you guys have been doing OOP principles, but just never been really told that you're doing OOP principles. So is everyone okay with defining a record structure? Okay, cool. So I don't need to go into the nitty-gritty on that. Okay. But remember, that's defining it. Then you would actually declare a variable of its type. So that's the use of it. Sorry. That's the use of the record structure. Now, from what we're going to do now is basically take record structures and put them on steroids. We're going to turn them into classes. Okay, so classes versus objects. Now, this is important to understand. The same way you could have one structure and many different students is the same setup here. We can have one class. Let me just get that. Where's my mouse? There's my mouse. Laser pointer. Aha. Okay. Okay. We have a blueprint, which is a class. Okay. Your class is a blueprint, a skeleton, a framework. You define how things will be done. You define the data that will be involved in the class, but it's not an object. An object is the instances of a class, the actual existence of the data. So a class is a blueprint. An object is an instance of a class. And I'm being very emphasis on the word instance. You use a class to create an object. But if you look at all the lovely Lego figures, are they all the same color? Are they all the same object? Because that's the same thing. No. I see one question, someone said yes. They're the same class, but not the same object. They have each slight differences. No. Same class, different objects. Okay, some of them have same colors. Okay, my bad. Are there? Yeah, okay, there's two red. Okay, so there are two of the same color at least. But the idea is you can have, and two black. Actually, there's, yeah. Okay. You can have your class which defines the basic skeleton. Okay, let's not debate the number of colors. And then we have our objects which are built or instantiated from one class. Everyone okay with that idea? Let's get off the color system. Okay. So here's just a table differentiating between classes and objects, so it makes it a bit easier, because sometimes we can intermingle the terms and it does get a bit confusing. So a class is a blueprint from which objects are instantiated. An object is an instance of a class. A class is used to bind data. Objects act as variables. Classes have logical existences. Classes have logical existences. Objects have physical existences. They exist in memory. Classes do not exist in memory. a class has to be declared once, has to be made once, but you can create multiple objects. So a class is the blueprint. The objects are the actual pieces of information. And I'll show you where we differentiate that in code in a few seconds. But this is here to help you try to differentiate between the term a class and the term object. Okay, because sometimes people misuse them incorrectly or they sometimes blend. Now, going back to your record structure, this would be considered your class. You would define the structure once. This would be your object. You can have multiple objects because you can have multiple students. Is that a bit more clear? So using your record structures as a basis, the structure would be your class because it defines what should be there. Your declaration is your object because you can have multiple pieces of information. But let's actually move on to classes because now we can start to work with them. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to read this out to you. You guys can read it. I'm going to start to show you how to do this. No, record structures do not have anything to do with instantiations and constructors. That's classes. I'll get back to the other question I saw. Okay. Just put this on my desk. Stuff I did, Joe. Lecture 03. Okay, Pathan. So class is basically like an integer or double, saying object as a class. Yes. I hope I'm not butchering your surname, Pathan. What you're saying is correct. Okay. So it might be difficult to see, but I can't zoom in because it messes up with the. So, I don't know. Maybe I can zoom in. I've tried it once before. It does mess up with some things. I'm not sure. Can everyone see the top corner of what I'm showing here? Your Solution Explorer. I'm taking that as a yes because I can't see your answers. Okay. To create a class, you right click on that on the that's going to annoy me just now. You right click on solution even, add, no, sorry, not that. You right click not on solution but on the name of your project. This lecture 3, that's the name of my project. Go add and you go class. Okay, so again, Solution Explorer, just pin that. Right click on the name of the project, add, and we go down and select class. Okay, now this form pops up. Okay, you got class selected, it's a common item, and it's class 1. Now we don't want to be called class 1, so we're going to call it a student. Generally, the name of your class is a noun. So student, chair, desk. Me and English aren't the best, so I'm not going to go and try explain nouns that much. But it's normally a singular and it's a noun. And we say add. Now, if you go back to our solution space, Solution Explorer, you'll see that there's our form1.vb, and now there's also a student1.vb. Is everyone clear on seeing that point? That we have an extra file now. Okay, this is a basis of our class. And now I'm going to try to get out of this magnification. section is no longer needed. Okay. So now you can see that I've got my form 1 there. I've got my student, and unfortunately, you don't get rid of the option statements. Now I can start to work. Now, contrary to your record structures, your record structure was declared as private. Your classes are declared as public. The variables that go inside, your attributes that go inside your class, or instance variables as they're more commonly referred to, are private. So private, and now underscore name, the string. Okay, we're going with the naming convention of underscore name. Me and Mr. Van der Westhuizen had a bit of a debate about it yesterday, about using the underscore, but it's a common practice to name the instance variables with an underscore. We'll explain why later on with property methods, but it's the easiest option that we could find. Okay, so this is what's being presented now is just what I've done. Right click on Solution Explorer, add a new class, give it a name, should be a noun. Data associated must be private. These are called attributes or instance variables. And yes, to your disdain and hatred, you must put the option statements on top of every class. It doesn't transfer across. Okay, so then we go and say private surname as string, private graduate, what is it? Me and spelling. Thank you. Not that. As Boolean. Okay, so that is our basic class. It's not finished, far from finished. Mr. Levin, VB can control the scope of get and set, like public get versus private. We're going to get to the get and sets later on. There's a different approach in VB known as property methods, but I'll explain that with more if we have time. Maybe I'll explain it today, or else we'll explain it more in depth on Monday. So here we have our class. Okay, it's separate. First thing, keep in mind, it's a separate file from our form. So if we go to our form, direct. What kind of data type is Boolean? Boolean is, wait, weren't you taught it last semester? As were you not taught about Bool or Booleans last semester? Okay, she went on over briefly. A Boolean, let's just make sure everyone's on the same page so we don't lose people. Boolean is storing a true or false. So something is either true or false, nothing else. It's a way of declaring, okay, I know the thing is some of you, actually I think majority of you are extended degree students, so you don't do comp sci this year, do it next year. So I need to make sure that everyone's on the same page there. Boolean is a true or false piece of information. It stores true or false. That is Boolean. I'll try to put up more data on it later. I'll put up an extra note. So here, I'm going to go and create a private student as student. So on this side, it is exactly the same as your record structure. I've declared student as student, but it's not a record structure, it's a class. Everyone can see that. Here's our class. Here's our program. So I'm going to add a button on so I can show you something. It's not in the slides, but I'll be in next week's slides since we do have a bit of time. Let's not waste it. btn int um, let's see what this is. Okay, I just want to check the questions I've got, and some of these are. Okay, I hope I'm not butchering your surname, Pathan. What's the difference between class and record structures? I'm going to get to that now. So your class and form are automatically linked. No, they're not automatically linked. Classes are not automatically linked. They only are linked when you go and link them as such, where I have a connection, where I've actually said students as students. I'm going to go with a single student for now. As student, I'm going to work with that. Okay. So let's open the code and actually start to work with it. So first thing I want to do is I want to say single student dot, and I don't know if you guys can see that list clearly enough. Do you see name, a graduation, surname, any of that? Is it visible? No. Okay, it's not visible because they set to private and they're going to stay private. They're going to stay private. Okay, we'll explain how to access it. Okay, it's a little bit blurry. Let me try and maximize that. Wrong page. Okay, that better. Do you see the name, surname, or graduated here? Okay, they are set to private, so we can't see them. We're never going to set them to public. For those who are putting that in the chat, the answer is no. They're never public. Okay. Just in case. So also we'll get to how to access that in a few seconds, but I want to show you the advantage of a class. Now, unlike record structures, a class can have methods. A class can have functions and subroutines. We refer to them as methods. So here we can have, say, a public function is graduated as string, and we can say if underscore graduated equals true, then return yes, else, return no. Okay. Okay, so here I'm adding methods, I'm adding functionality to the student class. So any object that is created from this class has this functionality. So I can go back to here. Let me zoom in again, because I know it does get blurry, as you guys have mentioned. Single student dot. Now you should see the is graduated. Okay, it's now listed because it's public. Now I can display this in a message box, but I want to show you something. This is very important. We'll cover this again next week, Monday. But this, I feel, since we have the time, we can cover it now. Is there any error in the code? Anything underlined in red? No, okay. So technically this should work, okay? This should work. Let's run it and see what happens. Okay, it breaks instantly, now reference. Okay, the system is automatically breaking. It doesn't even give a chance to do anything because it is giving a null reference. It's not because there's no value stored. Okay, this is the more important thing about a, uh, a working with classes and objects. I don't have an object. Okay, I've never ever created a object so far. There's no single point in the code so far where I've created the object. Now, what I mean by that is, yes, I've declared a variable as type student, but I haven't made an object. Okay, I'll come back to your questions. To work with a object, we need to instantiate it. We need to construct it. Again, I'm going to cover this in more depth on Monday, but as we have the time, I'm going to show you now, as the semester is short on time as is. So to create an object, I need to instantiate an object. I need to construct an object. And this is done through a command called a constructor. We have to say it's equal to a new student. This single line is where I create an object. Now, single student is an object when I run the code, because I have created the object. I've instantiated the object. And this is the biggest difference between a record structure and a class, is we need to instantiate the object. So we need to go and say that the variable is equal to a new type of given class. So we create an object of type student. So single student is now functioning. So if we run this, we're going to get no, they didn't graduate, because booleans are set to false by default. Okay, is everyone okay with what I've done there? in terms of, or somewhat okay in terms of I've instantiated the object. You have to instantiate it in a button or a function. Okay, where did I lose you guys? Because I'm getting mixed reactions on the chats now. Okay, I can't scroll back up too much. Okay, I've misspelled button, BTN. That's the mistake there. Let's just ignore that. Line 10. Line 10, good. This is the most important thing. No, you can't put line 10 below line 7. Okay. This line, this is known as, this is instantiating, okay, good, okay, that's actually what I was going to try to do. Could you define instantiation? Instantiation is creation. Let me try to find the, I'm not going to look for the damn definition in the dictionary. Instantiation, it refers to the creation of a object. So I'm creating it, I'm building it. Let's go back to the slides. Maybe this will make sense if I do it this way. Here we have a blueprint. Everyone okay with that? Okay. Can we play with the blueprint? Can we work with the blueprint? No. Okay. So the act of instantiation is taking the blueprint and making the object, making the Lego figure. So instantiation is the act of creating the object. So I instantiate the object based on the blueprint to give me the object. So instantiation is, in another way, creating or constructing the object. Does that make sense? Especially the person asked me to define it. Okay, good. It will take time getting used to this, ladies and gentlemen, but this is how objects work. So let's go back to the code and have a look at this. So remember, this is abstraction and encapsulation. We're abstracting the work. We're letting the person, in this case, access is graduated, but they can't access the name, surname, or graduated because they're all private, and these will remain private. We're allowing them to access this, but we're encapsulating by grouping common things together. So this is methods and functions that are grouped together and used. Just a question I see now, serve for a class. We call it instantiation, and for record structures, initialization. Initialization refers to more setting a value. So you initialize to 0, you initialize to false, that type of stuff. So for now, rather keep the terms separated. I think I must just find that glossary we used a few years ago with terminologies. But ladies and gentlemen, we got 10 minutes. Mr. Van Vesthuizen, I think maybe should I show them property methods? We have the time. What are your thoughts? 10 minutes left. Okay. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. Again, I'm going to expand further on this on Monday. But as we've mentioned, these are all private. Okay. That means I can't see them, I can't change them, I can't do anything with them. That means they're relatively useless to a degree. To access a instance variable, these are known as instance variables or attributes. To access them, we need to create in other languages, they're called accessors and mutators or getters and setters. VB and a few other languages have something known as a property method, which is a public property name as string. Now inside here, we have a get and a set. So the get allows us to get the information. So we will return the name, and the set allows us to do what? What do you think set allows us to do? Change the value zeta. Very good. So we can say that the name is equal to the value. Value is from here. And I'll explain this more in depth on Monday. Please, for those that may be like, okay, what the hell's going on? Relax, calm down. We're originally planning to explain this Monday, but we have a bit of spare time, so we're doing it now. So we'll have slides on this on Monday as well, so don't stress, please. But creating a property method has the benefits is the control. I can control how a person sets the name. I can control how a person changes the name, surname, or graduate. Those three instance variables or attributes. I can control their means of access. I can deny the access as well. So this gives me the ability to say, you can see the name, but you can't change it. Or you can change the name, but you can't see it. And I'll explain that more on Monday. Getters and setters are automatically generated. So let me just delete this quickly. So I went public property name as string. And you notice it's starting to complain. This is why we have the underscore here, so it doesn't get confused between these two. So your instance variables have to be named something slightly different to our property methods, because the property methods must have the proper name, because that's what we will see. So I'm going to press enter. It doesn't generate anything. I type get or I type set and I press enter, and it generates the rest for me. So it is automatically generated for me. So in this case, it's set then get. Doesn't really matter the order. So the set and get is added there for us by default when we type set and get. And you will need, for each instance variable, for each attribute, we need to have a property method in most cases. Okay, I'm not going to say always. There are some cases you don't. We'll explain those when we get there. Okay, what's the difference between a public property and a public function? A public property is a specific type of method, because it's both a subroutine and a function at the same time. That's going to sound like ridiculous, but you'll understand what I mean in a few seconds. I've got 5 minutes left. So let's type in name equals value and return name. Okay, so we have the property method for name and nothing else. Let's go back to our form. I'm going to magnify again so you guys can now see it. So if I go single student dot, you'll now see name. Name is now visible because I have a property method that is public, allows me to work with it. So I can say name equals Bob. Okay. In this case, it's a function. Oh, sorry, in this case, partly a subroutine, I guess. Message box. I'm not going to put a text box in right now. Single student dot name, and I can display the name. So a property method acts as an ability to set and gives us the ability to get. So in this case, I'm setting the name to Bob. In this case, I'm displaying the name. So a property method gives us both the ability to change it and also display it. How do you know which code to write in which class? You write, remember, we are grouping. Things that belong to a student would go in student. So anything that relates to a student would go inside student. Say if I was calculating marks for the student, that would be inside student. I would display the results in the form. I would interact with the object in the form. But most of the work will be done in the objects. We'll explain as we go on where things go. But ladies and gentlemen, one thing I'm telling you now, not in the notes, and this is a standard rule. You're not allowed ever to have a message box, text box, or any method of displaying or reading in a class. So in my class student, I cannot use text boxes, message boxes, input boxes, grids, nothing. That is only reserved for the form. The form, you have your text boxes, your message boxes, your input boxes. In your class, no, never. If you do that, your correctness will be set to 0. Okay, because your class does not dictate how things are displayed, how things are inputted. It gives you access to things. Okay, Zita, you're asking a very good question. Why don't we just give direct access to name by saying it public? This has got to do with control. I want to control how they set the name. I want to control how they access the name. Think of the example I gave yesterday of a pin. Should everyone be able to see your pin? No. So your property method is how we control the access. The property method is control how we change things. The property method is our control ability. And I'll explain more on this on Monday, but you guys can think about it till then. Oliver, the form 1 is linked to student, but only when I do that. This is what allows the link to occur between form 1 and the student class. And that is time for today, ladies and gentlemen. Again, I've discussed some things that aren't in the lecture slides. I'm well aware of that. The property method is one of them. I'll explain this more on Monday. This will be Monday's focus. So please don't worry about that. Okay? We're going to explain more about this on Monday. But since we had the time, I thought I would just start to show it to you now. Not to confuse you, but just so we have a bit of extra leeway in time. But again, this will be explained more in depth on Monday, so don't stress too much about that. The main thing I wanted you guys to get today was the ability to create the class in a separate file, and then the connection. Beyond that, it's Monday's work. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording now.